Hi, good evening or afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining the Collective's fifth, I think it's the fifth speaker series event that we've had. We're going to give folks just a few more minutes to jump on, just to make sure that we can have folks filling into our conference space here before we get into our great conversation about progressives moving the movement forward. Very excited to talk to three phenomenal leaders this afternoon. So give us about one more minute. We'll be back to you in just a second. All right, we're back. Thank you again for joining the Collectives, our Collective Power Speaker Series event this evening or afternoon if you're on West Coast time or around the world, who knows. I'm Stephanie Brown James, co-founder of the Collective, and I'm really excited to have this conversation for a number of reasons. One, we're talking about the progressive movement, which has really been a movement that Black leaders and Black activists, Black community members have championed for a very long time. I think in so many ways, the term progressive can be used to describe the activist work that has come from Black leaders in the Black community. And so to talk to three gentlemen who are really shepherding this progressive movement through the political lens, to me is very important. But also we know that this is the start of the Democratic National Convention. I hope that you're going to tune in tonight to hear some wonderful speakers or just be able to tune in to see how this whole virtual DNC convention is going to get started. I mean, I can tell you right now that I personally am going to miss the parties, but I am going to tune into the conversations because I do want to hear what the speakers have to say about the Democratic platform. And so as a part of the DNC, we wanted to make sure we had this conversation take place front and center at the beginning of the week, so that, again, you can hear from three leaders, three gentlemen who are really pushing for progressive changes within their communities. And so with that, I want to introduce our special guest of the evening. Hey, guys. I think they're going to come up.
Oh, hello.
Hello, how are you?
Awesome. Hey, okay, listen. Now, y'all know y'all all ready together. You done coordinated the outfits and everything. Look at y'all. Okay. That's called being in formation, as my queen Beyonce says.
There we go.
Welcome, gentlemen. Thank you for joining our conversation tonight.
Of course. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So what I want to do quickly is just introduce our three special guests this evening. And please, I encourage you to follow along with the conversation. You can drop a question. If you're tuning in on our Facebook page, you can drop a question there. Or if you're tuning in via our YouTube channel, the Collective's YouTube channel, you can drop a question there. Or you can tweet it to us by using hashtag Collective PAC. So again, we have three phenomenal leaders who are here with us. First, I want to introduce Mr. Jamaal Bowman, who has a storied career as an educator. He also recently won, just not that long ago, the Democratic nomination for New York Congressional District 16. He has definitely dedicated his career to public service and public education in the U.S. We also have with us Mr. Mondaire Jones, who is the Democratic nominee for the New York Congressional 17 District. And he is someone who I personally know from years of working together as young activists in the NAACP. And so I know that he is one who has always been committed to civil rights and social justice. When he wins in November, Mondaire would become the first LGBTQ member of Congress from the Black community. And so we are extremely excited to have my old time friend, Mondaire, here. And then last but not least, Mr. Charles Booker, the firecracker himself. If you were on Twitter a couple of months ago, you probably couldn't look at your page without seeing something from Mr. Charles Booker. You know, we know that he definitely is someone from the hood to the holler to make sure that people all across Kentucky have the representation that they need. He currently serves as one of the youngest state representatives in Kentucky. And will one day be our next senator from the great state of Kentucky. And so thank you guys so much for joining us. I think this is a very timely conversation for us to have, with it being the start of the Democratic National Convention. You know, 1972 at the convention, one of my sheroes, my Sarah, Shirley Chisholm, who is Miss Unbossed herself, was able to stand up and say that, you know, she wanted to put her name into the hat to be president of the United States. And her work as a grassroots organizer and activist in New York. So I'm sure Mondaire and Jamaal, this is really personal to you both. You know, she really in so many ways is a mother of the progressive movement. And so what I want to know, and thinking about Shirley Chisholm, or thinking about Ella Baker, who from the NAACP perspective, Mondaire is someone who I've really worked to, you know, kind of model myself after. Like, you know, these women have really been able to be the mothers of the progressive movement. I would love to know what their legacy means to you as we get ready to kick off the DNC convention. And actually, I'll start with Jamaal.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Shirley Chisholm being the mother of the Black progressive movement, I mean, you talk about being bold and being innovative and being a visionary and pushing the agenda. I mean, she represents all of that, and she represented that over 40 years ago. And to have someone in Congress now, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who worked as a staffer on Shirley Chisholm's staff, to now mentor myself and Mondaire, and she'll be mentoring Charles, I'm sure, in some way, shape, or form, is just phenomenal. You know, it's a clear example of how, you know, we are taking the baton, we are taking the torch, we are standing on their shoulders. And, you know, when you look across American history, from, you know, Sojourner Truth to Harriet Tubman, to Shirley Chisholm, you know, Black women have always led the way. And Mondaire always speaks very eloquently about his mom and his grandmother and how influential they were for him. And I could say the same thing about my mother and my grandmother and everything they brought into my life. And I'm a spoiled boy with 3 sisters who surrounded me with love and strength and a vision for what was possible in my life. And, you know, as a kid, I never thought about running for Congress. I was just trying to be a kid, go to school, have fun with my friends, and do my thing. And it wasn't until I got into education and really dove deep into our history as an educator, because I wanted to pass that history on to our students, that I really began to conceptualize what it means to be Black in America, as an activist pushing back against the system. What that meant from an activist perspective, from an educator perspective. And one of the reasons why I ran for office is because of people like Shirley Chisholm and many others who paved the way and showed me that that was possible, not just running, but being competitive and ultimately winning. So it's a real pleasure to stand on her shoulders and be here with you all and continuing to push this agenda forward in the way it needs to be pushed forward.
I would also add, Barbara Jordan to the list, right? That powerful voice in the United States House of Representatives whose voice was so influential in those Nixon impeachment proceedings. And it reminds me of how Ayanna Pressley was one of the foremost members of the House of Representatives calling for the impeachment of Donald Trump. You know, it has been Black women throughout history who have led the fight for social justice, economic and racial justice, which we know are inextricably linked together. And so, you know, my heart is full with gratitude, and I'm obviously very happy to see a Black woman at the top of the ticket for the first time in American, or on the ticket, I should say, for the first time in American history. And I'm excited to see what she does when she gets into office, and to be a partner with her in what will be the most progressive Congress in American history. And I'm really, really excited about just expanding upon that legacy, that extraordinary legacy of service of those two women that you mentioned, Stephanie. And let me also say I'm really excited to be here joining the collective, because you guys were an early endorser of my campaign back when a lot of people were dismissive of what we might achieve in this race.
Appreciate that, Mondaire. And just to tweak the question a little bit, Charles, because it didn't. I love when people say things and you didn't even realize until you heard it out loud that this will become the most progressive Congress in history, with the election of just the Black folks that we are, working to get into office. Just y'all alone. But I think about, Charles, you're in a state like Kentucky that maybe people wouldn't say is necessarily considered a progressive state, but yet you have been able to be a champion of the people, to have progressive ideals and policies brought to the forefront. And so when thinking about you and the trajectory of this legacy of people like a John Lewis, how do you feel as though you and the three of you all, how do you fit in the continuum of the progressive movement in civil rights? Like, how do you view civil rights today, even in this time frame?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for helping to put this together. And I appreciate you all seeing and hearing me and standing with me in this fight here in Kentucky as well. And I, of course, want to echo what my brothers have stressed. I realize whose shoulders I am on, and the trailblazers that made it even possible for me to be here and have the voice that I have. Trailblazers here in Kentucky, like Georgia Powers, Eleanor Jordan, Maddie Jones, my grandmother as well, Joanne Hearn. I come from a long stock, and we all realize who actually puts the work in making this country go around. And, the thing that gives me a lot of hope, considering that I'm talking with two gentlemen that are prepped and prepared to go kick the door in Congress, is that I hope that I can show that we ain't done. Now, I didn't win my primary. I'm still in the state legislature here in Kentucky. But if you see what we sparked and we ignited in Kentucky, and you realize that when we send Jamaal and Mondaire to the halls of Congress and shake things up, that we are just getting started. We're the most progressive in history, but we got a whole hell of a lot more work to do. And I'm proud to represent that. We're bending the arc. That's something I always talk about. And you mentioned John Lewis. As we think about and reflect on his life and his legacy, we are the arc benders. We're bending that arc towards justice. And, right now in this moment in Kentucky, across the country, I can see us physically pulling on the arc, tugging that arc down, and it's bending towards us. And I'm inspired to be a part of that. And I feel it. We're ready to meet this moment. And we all are examples of that truth.
Listen, you got us bending that arc like we tearing down Confederate statues. You know what I mean? Let's pull it all down. You know what I mean? So I love that Mondaire brought into the space Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who has definitely been a trailblazer in so many ways, and in just one term in Congress. We know it's not the only term. We look forward to helping her get reelected in November. But I think about Ayanna Pressley and even other candidates like Candace Valenzuela or Cori Bush or Marquita Bradshaw, who recently won their primary elections and are on the ballot for Congress this fall. These are people who were literally powered by the people, as the three of you were. And I know, Mondaire has an activist background. I've known Mondaire since high school when we were in NAACP together. And I know that both Charles and Jamaal, that you all have specialized in being able to be responsive to the community. Can you give us some insight into how were your wins possible, Mondaire and Jamaal? Like, what do you think was your secret sauce to galvanizing the community to be incumbents to win your seats? And Charles, in your work with Hood to the Holler, what is it that is continuing to keep folks in Kentucky engaged and ready to make sure we turn out in droves in November? So I think with that, I'm going to start with Mondaire there, then we'll do Charles, and then Jamaal.
So I started out launching a primary challenge against a member of Congress who chairs the House Appropriations Committee. She's an extremely powerful figure in the Democratic Conference and had been in office since January 1989. And a lot of people were dismissive of that, right? They were like, why would you go up against a fellow Democrat? What sense does that make? And I sort of was explaining my policy disagreements, of which there were many. And then, of course, people said, well, there's no way you can defeat her. She's so powerful. She had never had a primary challenge. And 3 months later, she announced her retirement, and it became a rare open seat for the first time in 30 years. And the person who came in second place, who I was worried about for a good portion of the race, was someone who's the son of a billionaire. He spent $5.4 million literally to buy a congressional race. And the way that we were able to get nearly 3 times as many votes as he did is by being rooted in the community, right? Folks in large swaths of the district didn't have to become introduced to me because they had heard about me. I had been rooted in my community. I had been an activist for public school students. I have been an activist for criminal justice reform. And also important was the message, right? It was centering my lived experiences as someone who grew up in Section 8 housing and on food stamps, and who was running a strongly progressive platform where Democrats, for example, overwhelmingly support Medicare for all. I was the only candidate doing that. And I related it to my personal experience, growing up, learning about not having health care, relating it to essential workers who have to go into work and don't have health care, largely Black and Hispanic people who are being harmed disproportionately by COVID-19. I think the reason we did so well in terms of the messaging is that people are hungry for change. They're tired of seeing the same folks, who basically older white men who come from money or a political family leading this country and oftentimes selling out the best interests of the people who they're supposed to represent. And so it wasn't difficult to get hundreds of volunteers in the district phone banking, early on, knocking on doors before COVID-19, and relationally organizing, meaning calling up folks who they know and telling them and vouching for me so that it became more real than just seeing a television ad or mail or a digital ad. And all those things conspired to really propel me above the rest of the field.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Mondaire. Charles?
Yeah, and as much as I have so much love and respect for my brothers for winning their primaries, I want to make it clear that what we did here in Kentucky was a tremendous victory. And although it did not vote at the ballot box, what we were able to do against the most well-funded Senate campaign and primary in our history was a spark. It was an ignition of something that was so much bigger than this one race. And we're feeling it even now with Hood to the Holler. I was able to show, we were able to show that no matter where you come from, what you look like, how much money you have in your pocket, what pronoun you use, whether you're walking or in a wheelchair, whether you're from the hood or from the holler, that you matter, that you're critically important. You deserve a government that's accountable to you. And in fact, you deserve to lead. And because of that, we inspired people to get involved that had never been involved in politics ever before. We had folks turning out to vote, banging on the doors to get in that had never voted before. That's the moment that we're trying to seize now, even as we still wade through the fight for justice for Breonna Taylor and all the Breonna Taylors across our country. We're showing that we're ready. We're showing that we're poised, and we're showing that you cannot ignore people. You can't dismiss us because we don't come from a lot. We don't have a lot of money in our pocket. You can't demean and disrespect regular folks anymore, because we know now that the change isn't just coming, that we are that change. And Hood to the Holler is a testament to that truth. You know, I'm a young guy. She mentioned youngest Black state legislator in Kentucky since the first one. And I've worked in every level of government. And it wasn't because I had those that were opening doors for me. It was because I was working my way in. And because of the ability to build coalitions as a director of Fish and Wildlife, I worked for our mayor's office here. I worked in Metro Council, worked in Congress. I was working my way into these spaces to understand how we can push for system level change. And I'm not ashamed of the fact that I come from the poorest zip code in Kentucky. I don't shy away from my story of having to ration insulin because I can't afford it sometimes as a type 1 diabetic. I'm not ashamed of the fact that I carry trauma from having cousins murdered, 5 cousins the last 4 years. I lean into my pain and I use it to inspire others. And what we did was break down barriers that help more regular folks realize that they are important and that they can lead too. And so Hood to the Holler is a way to catalyze that. We're going to train a new wave of leaders, citizen lobbyists, folks that are looking to pursue leadership at the local, state, and federal level. We're going to re-enfranchise folks. Kentucky has been one of the most disenfranchised states in the country. So when you think that poverty is generational and that people are being robbed of their voice, well, no wonder things don't change. We haven't been given the chance. We're taking that chance now. And ultimately, this is about a new Southern strategy. How do we talk about issues that have been used to divide us along the lines of race, geography, class, and build new coalitions so that we can push for the bold change that allows a Green New Deal to be shouted for and cried out for in Kentucky? We want a Kentucky New Deal. We want that thing so bad. And how do we push for the true justice that Dr. King spoke of? We're ready for that moment. And I think we just need more people to see our power individually and collectively and get past those barriers of racism and inequity. And I am just so inspired because I know we're ready to do it. And Hood to the Holler is a part of that movement.
Mm-hmm. And I want to actually thank you, Charles, and thank you, Mondir. And I want to tweak your question a little bit slightly, Jamaal, because you are the founder of Cornerstone Academy for Social Action in the Bronx. And as a principal, a school founder, a public educator, I think there's so many similarities between the education system and politics. And just, politics really is about educating the community and figuring out how you can engage them to help them, move up the ladder of how they express themselves as voters and as engaged folks in the community. And so I'm curious to how you feel that your background in the education system has been able to help you connect to the community in a way that sparked such a huge outpouring of support for you during your campaign.
Yeah, it's a great question. Education first and foremost is about service. It's about serving the children. It's about serving the families, and it's about serving the needs of the community. It's about listening carefully and learning what those needs are, and then organizing, strategizing, and collaborating around coming up with solutions to the problems identified by the students in your classroom and the families that you serve. And one of the things that's also, when you talk about the education system and our political system, you have to talk about the economic system as well. And what you see within all systems is you see a level of inequality, a level of disenfranchisement, and you see what you see most prevalent is the prevalence of white supremacy existing within all of these systems, right? So when you look at our members of Congress, historically, they've been majority white, they've been majority male. When you look at the congressional makeup from an economic standpoint, we're talking 50% are millionaires. And when you look at our education system, and throughout my 20 years, I've worked mostly in Title I schools, which are schools located in neighborhoods that have been under-resourced and schools that are underfunded. You see the majority of those schools, not just in the Bronx and New York City, but across the country, are disproportionately Black and brown. And education is incredibly political, one, because it's publicly funded, but two, that power structure is in place. So anyone that comes with a new vision and new ideas, particularly for Black and brown children, they're often shunned and marginalized and silenced within that system. That's why the work to organize and bring together parents, and teachers and students and open up our own district public middle school is something I'm very proud of that we were able to do. But still, even within that space, whenever I tried to be innovative or progressive or push the envelope, there were people within the system that tried to make sure we didn't do those things. And I was investigated multiple times throughout my career as principal because our ideas were so bold and visionary, the system wasn't ready for it. But when you went to visit schools located in upper middle class or majority white communities, they were allowed the freedom and the opportunity to be innovative and to push an agenda that was empowering for their students. And, to go back to your other question around, what was the secret sauce? I think Mondare and Charles spoke to it very eloquently. Number one, we are grinders. The three of us were grinding each and every day in every aspect of our campaign, whether it was fundraising, knocking on doors, connecting with folk, we were grinding. But I think the second and probably the most important thing, we come from the same communities that we are now trying to serve. So we bring working class experiences, we bring experiences of the working poor. I lived in the projects, I lived in rent stabilized apartments, I was raised by a single mom. I've had friends and family members murdered, family members addicted to crack cocaine. We bring those experiences, those personal and professional experiences, to conversations that we had throughout our campaigns, and now we're going to bring it to our elected seats. And that brings a certain level of authenticity and even empathy and compassion as we engage in policy work. We are not going to pass policy or vote for policy that doesn't meet the needs of the people in our communities. We're not going to do any work or pass policy that doesn't center those who are most vulnerable, those who have been historically disenfranchised. We are not going to do that because we know what that's like from personal experience. So we will continue to center those we built authentic, strong relationships with. And that's the secret sauce. Those authentic relationships, those authentic experiences, that's what helped me to get elected. And that's what helped all of us to build and be a part of the movement we're a part of now.
And I'm so glad that you said the word authentic, because I think that sums it up right there, and especially in the midst of coronavirus, in the midst of constantly having, front and center in your face, the disrespect of Black people and marginalized people and people of color. And sometimes it's just so overwhelming that it's like, I don't have time to hear. I want to say BS, but I know my mother is watching. So I am just going to say BS. That's as clean as I'm going to get it, Mama. But who has time for fakeness? You know what I mean? And I really believe that the authenticity that you three have brought to your races to show your commitment to your communities has really been second to none. And a part of that is being able to speak to both the pain and the joy of what's happening, amongst your districts and in your communities and in your state. And what I hate is that sometimes, you hear like the words progressive and it comes with like a certain thought of like what progressives are and who it is. And oftentimes you hear progressives and you don't think Black people, which is so absurd to me, and so what I want to know from you all is when you hear the word progressives, and more importantly, as you're going out into your communities and talking about issues, what policy solutions are you all talking about that is making your communities hopeful? Like, what's making them feel like, that Mondare, he's speaking my language. Charles gets me. Jamaal is hearing me. He understands me. What are the policy prescriptions that you all are prescribing that's getting your folks to be like, yep, and that's why I have his back to make sure that he can represent our communities?
We're talking about, I'll speak for myself, and I've heard my friends on this Zoom talking about it too. We're talking about healthcare. We're talking about how in the richest nation in the history of the world, it shouldn't be that, over the course, even before COVID-19, 87 million people in this country were either uninsured or underinsured, meaning they had some coverage, but the cost of care was still a barrier to getting necessary medical care. And overwhelmingly now, something like 88% of Democrats support Medicare for all. We know that it's the only policy that would literally insure everybody in the midst of a global pandemic that people are comparing to the 1918 Spanish flu, where Black and Hispanic people are dying disproportionately from COVID-19 infection. Why? Because of the rate of underlying illnesses being higher. Why is that? Because we know that Black people and Hispanic people disproportionately have challenges getting health care, and so they're more likely to develop these underlying illnesses. And it shouldn't be that, frankly, in these safely Democratic districts like where I'm from and where Jamaal's from, that people are not running on that as a solution to one of the most intractable, severe problems that we have, which is this crisis of health. And so, for me, we talk about what it means to be a progressive, and I know that some of the elder statesmen, who are Black, or also come from the Black community, tend to think of progressives in a negative way. It's a white-led movement. They say, well, first of all, we're changing that. People like me, Jamaal and Charles and Cori Bush and Ayanna and AOC and Rashida and Ilhan, we're all changing that perception. But also, I care more about substantive policy, sort of substantive representation, than I do at this point about descriptive representation. There are folks who say, well, vote for me because I'm Black. But look, I'm someone who recognizes, I think pretty acutely, that the power of representation, right? I've said on the campaign trail that growing up poor, Black, and gay, I never imagined that someone like me could run for Congress, let alone win. And it was only in recent years when I started to see openly LGBTQ people start to get elected that changed things. But I want to know, what do you stand for? What are you fighting for? Are the policies that you support actually going to improve materially the lives of the Black community? Because if not, I'll take somebody white who supports Medicare for all. Because I know that we're going to come closer to getting the kind of justice that we need as a result of that. And that is an ongoing tension. That is an ongoing tension within the Black community as it concerns Black elected officials. I know members of the CBC disagreed with me on some members of the CBC disagreed with me on this. But one thing I've been really encouraged by is to see in New York State, for example, the progressives who got elected at the state legislative and of course congressional level, those were progressive, largely progressives of color, like
right.
Black and brown.
Yeah, I feel like, listen, there's a time for symbolism, but baby, it is not right now. Okay, we need significance. We need substance. That's right. Jamaal, talk to me about the substance.
Yeah, so, echoing Mondair's point around Medicare for all, that really got people excited throughout the district. A Green New Deal as well, particularly the part about the federal jobs guarantee targeting communities of color, communities that were left out of the New Deal during the Great Depression. But the other part of it is, right, so I use a fictional reference when we get into these conversations. We're trying to build Wakanda right here in NY16. I want to be very clear on that. We want to build Wakanda. We want to tap into the unlimited potential of our kids and our communities that have been neglected and build remarkable cities where everyone's working, everyone's creating, everyone's innovating, and we're living in peace amongst each other. And the policies that align with that are reparations, number one, massive federal investments in our communities, particularly the communities that have been neglected, and in alignment with Medicare for all and the Green New Deal, criminal justice reform, which ends mass incarceration and how it continues in our community and ends police brutality as well, a reinvestment in public health so we can give people true safety and security around housing infrastructure, food security, fully funding our schools, etc., and then dealing with the issue of economic inequality in a very real way. We are engaged living through a global pandemic, second biggest crisis since the Great Depression. And while over 160,000 people have died, the millionaire and billionaire class has grown. So if you talk about a nation that is morally corrupt and bankrupt, that's this country now. So while we boast about our financial wealth, if we can't save lives, we are morally bankrupt, right? So the issue of economic inequality, and listen, if we could bail out the airline industry and the banking industry and Wall Street and allow millionaires and billionaires to grow during the pandemic, we could bail out the people who have been most disenfranchised and who have suffered the most under the American institution. That is something that's gotten people excited throughout the campaign.
Speak on it, brother. It's true. Charles?
Look, I was trying to stay quiet over here. I come from a church family now. Both my parents are ministers. We don't play around. I was getting fired up over here.
Go ahead. If you got to hoop and holler, go ahead.
I ain't ashamed of it. The interesting dynamic for me and my run for U.S. Senate is that everything that Mondaire and Jamaal are talking about, we have the responsibility and the really incredible opportunity to tell that story in places where you wouldn't expect it. And when people ask about progress and label places like Kentucky and say, oh, they're not progressive, they're not listening. We want progress. And if you sit down with someone and you put the politics aside, we always realize, one, how much we have in common, and two, that we're fighting a lot of the same battles. And as soon as poor Black people, poor brown people, poor white people realize that we're on the same side, that addressing structural racism and gross inequity will uplift all of us, that winning on Medicare for all and universal basic income and fighting for reparations for descendants of enslaved Americans, doing the work to invest in people, prioritizing people, will uplift and transform our future for everybody. And once we realize that who we're against are these big corporate entities, these corrupt politicians that are profiting from our pain, laughing while we languish, and walking to the bank while we're dying because we can't afford our medication. When we realize what we're really fighting against, we're unstoppable. And the message that I took all across Kentucky and pushing across the country is about ending poverty. We need people that can run because we see the humanity of our folks and have the audacity to say that my aim, my priority, my agenda is about ending and abolishing poverty, not just tinkering around the edges. And, by telling my own story and leading with that bit of transparency about what I've experienced, my own testimony, seeing my mom go without eating so that I could eat, that stuff ain't political. And as soon as you start to put that out there and explain that, we don't have to accept this. Some folks that vote for Trump will be like, wait a minute, you're right. We don't have to accept that. We want change and he ain't it. And is right. Because if we decide to stand up and say we're not going to get robbed anymore, demeaned anymore, disrespected and kicked off the cliff, then there's nothing they can do. There's nothing the Mitch McConnells of the world can do to stop us. And that's what inspires me about the notion of progress in this moment, because we realize that we are the vehicle to make it happen. And Black leadership is critical in making sure that we get there, regardless of whether the signs fall down.
Listen, hey, that's because the devil know you talking some truth over here.
He shook his room like he shook the room.
Did he shake the room, Jamaal? He shook the room. Go get back. Get back. Hey, listen. I'm going to come back to this, Charles. But when I tell you, I sure hope Amy McGrath gets that. I'm going to come back to it, though, Charles. Jamaal, Mondaire's eyes just went big. I'm not going to go there right now, Mondaire. I am going to come to you, though. So Quentin, we're co-founders of the Collective. We have two little boys, Carter and Elijah, who, thank the Lord, haven't made their way in here yet tonight. They're 3 and 4. And I think about their futures often, as I'm sure us as parents, we think about our kids and just the lives we want them to have. And I keep coming back to what I now know is our word of the night, and that is authentic. And I want them to live their most beautiful, authentic lives. And the fact that so many people in our communities cannot live that authentic life simply because they love someone that society says perhaps you shouldn't love. I mean, that tears at my heart. And so I thank you for saying about how you grew up poor, Black, male, and gay. And you talk about often Harvey Milk, and you talk about Bayard Rustin, and you talk about Barbara Jordan. And I even think about members of Congress right now who are not living in their truth. I'm gonna be honest. or elected officials who can't live in their truth because they feel like perhaps they can't represent their communities in their authentic way to show that there is commonality amongst us. But what does this race mean to you and your family, even like as you are running as a Black male, gay, brilliant brother right now? Like what does this moment mean for you?
It means the world. And I was doing an interview recently with it's so funny. I was doing an interview with the Stanford Daily, which is my alma mater's school newspaper. And somehow midway through that interview, I thought to myself, I was just freaking out like over the past few years about wanting to run, but just not being so deathly afraid that the world would not accept me and that I would not be successful in electoral politics. And so for that reason, for most of my life, I never imagined actually running for office, not because I didn't want to, not because I didn't think I would have something to offer to my folks. You know, I grew up in a community that, frankly, is plagued with representation that is not adequate. You know, you some folks, you never see them at all in the community, and you know they don't think about entire swaths of the population, whether it's the Black community, the lower income community, the LGBTQ plus community. And on the subject of representation, it was only through like watching the show called Noah's Ark, which you know at the time was still on TV, where I'd seen, I think, openly gay Black men in loving relationships for the first time ever. I just never imagined that growing up in the Baptist church, where it is still taboo to be gay, but like it's better today than it was even then.
And within the civil rights community, Mondaire.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, look, so Bayard Rustin, architect of the March on Washington, really couldn't be too publicly associated with MLK because it was a scandal that Bayard was gay, right? And so, you know, he couldn't really be front and center in the civil rights movement, even though he was this brilliant tactician who really helped to move the ball. And so I get messages every day on social media from people young and old who are saying that I am helping them to live their authentic lives and to come to terms with who they are. And in a world where the challenges faced by the LGBTQ plus community are compounded if you are a queer person of color, whether it's homelessness, difficulty accessing healthcare, you name it. You know, and of course we know that younger LGBTQ plus people disproportionately experience thoughts of suicide. If I can be helpful in mitigating that experience through representation and through talking about these issues, then I'm really excited about it. It is a surreal experience to carry that responsibility as a first, right? And our future colleague Richie Torres is, you know, who's one of his parents are Black. He's also going to be, you know, one of the first open Black members of Congress. And so I'm really excited about offering that representation that I did not have when I was doing that.
Thank you for that, Mondaire. And I would say probably the second theme of tonight is representation. And I just want to quickly come back to you, Charles, with the representation question, because, I mean, many of us were devastated when you didn't win the Senate race. and if I'm honest, it was bittersweet because it's like Mondaire and Jamaal and, you know,
it would have been too much, though.
Jackie, and you know, we had Jackie, and we had Cameron Webb in Virginia.
It would have been too much. It would have been too much. The KKK would have organized and started marching on in our community. It would have been too much.
I'm telling you, I feel like maybe our poor little hearts couldn't take it all. But listen, I was ready to take it, baby. Okay, because you know, I happened to be a part of a group that, you know, was really working on the All Eyes on Kentucky hashtag, if y'all saw that go around, because literally all eyes were on Kentucky and Charles Booker winning his Senate race. And then it was like, wait a minute. And I believe you when you say that you still won, because I do still feel like in that situation, people were heard and represented in a way that they never were before. I'm also hopeful for your future. That's a whole nother conversation. But I really want to know about Amy McGrath in the sense of, and this is, you can give a quick answer. We supporting her, right?
So that's the question. Yeah, well, I've come out to endorse it. And, you know, I put out a full statement in explaining that we realize the work ahead of us. And, you know, when I set out to run this race and getting in politics in general, it's not about me. It's always been bigger than me. I'm just here to do my part. And the work that I've spoken of, that I speak of now, that I'm still leaning into, is going to proceed regardless of who wins or who doesn't. But who wins and who doesn't is important. And we know that there is no future that allows us to reach our potential where Mitch McConnell is still there. He has to go. And, you know, a lot of the work of bending the arc is about how do we keep moving forward? How do we keep building progress and accountability? And so what I would say is we have the opportunity now to create more accountability towards the structural change that we want to see. And I believe that Amy McGrath has an opportunity and a responsibility to step up and answer that call. And she's not going to be able to ignore it because we're not going to shut up. And there are a lot of people in Kentucky, which is why I also feel like we won, is we inspired a lot of folks to say, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to start doing things that I hadn't done before. I'm going to get uncomfortable because I can't stay home. Because I know if I stay home, my door can be kicked in and I can be killed in my home by the agency I pay for to protect and serve me. So I'm not going to be quiet. And now we're saying, let's keep that going. Let's stay active. Let's keep leaning in. Let's keep building our networks around one another. Let's realize that this is for us. And my hope is that we'll take that through November and on into the other work we have to do across Kentucky and across the country. But yeah, you know, nothing happens by mistake. Being able to be connected to these incredible leaders here is blessing me, and seeing folks all across this country looking at Kentucky and saying, wait a minute, something different's happening there. Let's pay attention to the place we never cared about before. It's inspiring me, and I'm proud of that, and I'm ready for what's next.
Thank you, Charles. What a grown-up answer that was from you. And you know what? But it's the truth though. It's the truth though, because look, at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell has to go. He has to go, not just for the state of Kentucky, but for all of us, because he is blocking so much progress that needs to happen in this country. So thank you for saying that. And we're going to get ready to wrap up in a little bit and have a couple of rapid fire questions from you for each of you. But Jamaal, want to ask you, so Kamala Harris was announced as the VP pick last week. There's so much being talked about with her pick, with her background as a prosecutor, as a DA, you know, as Attorney General, just Joe Biden, his, you know, all leading up to so much commentary that goes back to Black men. And specifically, this question that I really feel is kind of lingering out there: will Black men vote in droves in November? You're in the Bronx, you're a Black man. Want to know, as you're going out on the campaign trail, and I am assuming coming, talking to many people in your community, many Black men, I'm sure, about voting, what is the message that you're giving them right now of why they should not only be hopeful, but really exercise their right to vote in this moment?
If we don't get involved, we don't have no power. Like, that's the bottom line. That's where the power lies. And not just in terms of voting at a particular election, in terms of being engaged in the democratic process on a consistent, almost day-to-day basis matters tremendously. You know, when you take an issue like voter suppression, it doesn't just happen at the presidential level. It happens for Senate races, congressional, House races, as well as state House races, city council races, county races, school board races. We need to be in the game. We need to be involved. We need to be engaged in the democratic process on a consistent basis. That's one of the main reasons why I ran for office. To my dear's point, yes, the representation was inadequate. But secondly, I don't see many people like me running for office, not here or anywhere across the country. So that's one of the reasons why, I decided to run in the first place. And, when it comes to voting for, President Biden, full transparency, wasn't my first pick, right? But he's there now, and we need to support him so that we can get Donald Trump out of the White House and make sure we never have someone like Donald Trump again. And I think that's the bigger point, right? Because if we do all this organizing and all this great work and we get Biden in, Kamala in, we flip the Senate and take the House, if we allow ourselves to relax at that moment,
right,
they will come back stronger in 2022, 2024, and going forward. Democracy is a contact sport. And if we really want power, we really got to be in the game at a level where we're engaged on a day-to-day basis. Because, you know, like my mother used to tell me, and many older folk used to tell me, if you're not engaged, you can't complain, right? So I'm not trying to just complain and not be engaged. We need to be engaged. We need to be in the game because that's where the power is, and that's where transformative policy can be passed, both at the local and the national level.
Yeah, listen, and a little commercial break to say, and if you do want to see more candidates like Jamaal Bowman, Charles Booker, and Mondaire Jones, go to collectivepac.org/candidates, and you'd see the over 125 candidates that we've endorsed. Beautiful, brilliant Black people that are working to serve their community. So please go there to check them out. But I will say to that point, Jamaal, one of the things that we're talking about and really trying to uplift at the collective is that we got to vote up ballot. And by voting up ballot means you're starting at your local level. Who's running for a city council and school board? And, the people that are closely associated with becoming the lawmakers that are making the laws that govern your life. Yes, we got to be concerned about the Biden-Harris ticket and support them and work to make sure that we can get Donald Trump out of office. But it's so important to support y'all and to support folks who are running for state representative seats and who are deciding budgets for how your state dollars and your local dollars are spent. That's so important. So I'm so happy that you brought that up. And I think it's a really excellent mobilizing message to get folks to understand that we can't sit this one out. Like you said, it is a contact sport. Hey, if you don't speak up, then you got to shut up. Okay, that sounds so bad. I don't really mean it that harsh, but it's the first thing that came to my mind. You know what I mean? And it rhymed and it sounded. So I'm gonna go with that for now. So in closing, wait. Excuse me while I drink from my Kamala Harris Howard University alumni cup. Thank you. Had to get it in before the end of the night. I'm so proud to be a Howard alumni. Anyways, but I need to hear some things from Kamala Harris this week. I'm going to say that. And I think the Black community needs to hear some things from Kamala Harris. We need to hear some things from Joe Biden. We need to hear some things from other speakers. So my last question of the evening is, it's the DNC convention. Who are you looking forward to hearing from? And what messages are you looking forward to hearing out of this DNC convention? I think we'll start with Charles.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to seeing what AOC does with her 60 seconds. I've said this. Look, you give someone like that 60 seconds. Give me 60 seconds. We're gonna have the Holy Ghost going on in there. I also want to hear Senator Sanders and my forever FLOTUS. And some of the themes that I want to see elevated is a conviction towards pushing back on the status quo. We can't keep doing the same thing and expect things to be different. And we can't run away from these structural issues. And I hope and I believe that there's an opportunity that they should seize to be acknowledging of, okay, we all need healthcare as a right. Let's commit to that more. We need to address poverty in a real way. Let's commit to that more. Let's push ourselves and let's be accountable. I'm going to be listening for that.
Thank you. Jamaal?
I'm looking forward to hearing Karis 1, Chuck D.
There you go.
Kim. Who am I missing? Brother Jay from X-Clan. I would love for these brothers to be there, but unfortunately they're not, it is what it is, but I'm pushing for that for 2024.
Shall we make that happen, Jamaal?
Listen,
we may need to make an after party with them happen.
Listen.
And have them give us their thoughts. I'm gonna hit you up offline about that.
Yeah. I want to hear from Killer Mike, KRS-One, and Nas. Let's make that happen. But for the speakers that are lined up, Michelle Obama, always love to hear what she has to say. I want to hear from Kamala as well, Bernie Sanders, and AOC. I want to hear what they have to say.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Mondaire?
I want to see AOC take that 60 seconds and turn it into at least 5 minutes, which is what, she deserves that and so much more, I think.
Claim my time.
I feel like when you add up all the Republicans they got speaking this week, you'll be there watching for days on end.
Ooh, baby.
I want to hear somebody on that presidential ticket say that they support legalizing marijuana. I know it's not going to be Joe Biden, so that leaves one person. I want to hear people talk about the urgency of the healthcare crisis in a way that would actually improve the lives of everyday folks who are struggling. I want to hear somebody who's going to be in elected office with some power talk about the student debt crisis right now. So I may just be looking for Bernie Sanders and AOC at this point in time, and I'd love for Michelle Obama also to. Oh, Elizabeth Warren is also speaking, y'all, and Ayanna.
She is.
Yes.
Yeah. I think is she tonight? I know Bernie Sanders is tonight, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bernie is tonight. I think maybe she's tonight, but thank you. Yeah, I think. Listen, that's a great lineup. I appreciate. I think all three of y'all said AOC, and so the thing I hate is that this is via video. Man, can y'all imagine if we were all in Milwaukee right now? That thing would be. Can't even speak about it. You know what I mean? And that way AOC could get her 5 minutes because I'm sure they got it scripted so tight with it being video. But nonetheless, we're all going to watch and be hopeful to hear the things that we need to hear to mobilize our base and to make sure that folks feel heard and seen and understand that. I mean, this is it, y'all. This election in November is something quite serious. And I just want to, as we close, I want to give my extreme appreciation. I feel most blessed and honored to have this convo with Charles, Jamaal, and Mondaire. This has really been the highlight of this will be definitively the highlight of my week. I already know. I don't care who's speaking this week. I heard from y'all three, and I'm very grateful because you gave us your authentic selves and you represented the best you could for your community. So just know that the Collective PAC has your back. We pride ourselves, Mondaire, being the first ones in the game.
Yep.
And we will be with you across the finish line. And once you are elected, we'll be there to help you govern the best that you can. And so thank you, brothers, tonight for your service, for your time. And thank your families for lending y'all to us too, because I know it's quite a toll on your families for you to do this. Mm-hmm. And so with that, I want to just say thank you so much to everyone that tuned into our 5th Collective Power Speaker Series event. We are so happy that we can have these conversations take place with you all. And let me just say, I apologize that I didn't get to anybody's questions today. I was focused on what I needed to ask. So for the next one, I guarantee that I got caught up in the convo, y'all. I would guarantee that we will take some questions from you all the next time we have our speaker series, which will be in a couple of weeks. So be on the lookout for that. You can go to collectivepac.org for more information about all the work that we have going on. I also encourage you to visit votelive.org, where we have information about our voter registration campaign to register over 250,000 Black voters this election cycle. We're focused on all angles, whether it's the nonprofit side to get folks registered or whether it's the political side to get brothers like this elected. So thank you for joining us. Lastly, I just want to say we have our new Collectives fundraising circle. So if you're interested in fundraising to support guys like these in their races, I encourage you to send an email to investments@collectivepac.org. We are committed to giving real money to our candidates that we endorse. And we can only do that with your support because they need the resources to have successful campaigns be run. And so please send an email to investments@collectivepac.org. And with that, thank you so much for sharing time with us this evening. We hope that you watch the DNC convention and have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Thank y'all.
Thank y'all.